staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to the Halley Elise Show, featuring your host, empowerment psychic Halley Elise. She is an author, psychic, and media personality, and has been listed as one of the top 100 psychics in America. Empowerment psychic Halley Elise shares the spiritual, metaphysical, holistic, and magical powers of the universe. Follow Halley on her website at HalleyElise.com, and all her shows can be seen via live stream video. Now, here's your host, empowerment psychic Halley Elise.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. If you're wondering why we had a little delay today and there were lots of little commercials, it's because I ran late in traffic. So I apologize. It's one of those days. You know, it's funny. I moved from one area back to the Boca Raton area thinking, it's closer to everything. Well, some things are closer, some things aren't. It used to take me like 7-8 minutes to get to the station. Now it takes a bit longer. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Brutal weather that we are having, I tend to get very tired. So I try to get as many naps as possible, which is kind of funny. I know a lot of people, they'll go to, let's say, a conference and they will have the room ice cold and find themselves falling asleep. For me, it's just the opposite. It's the heat that knocks me on my behind. So between the traffic, taking a quick little cat nap that turned into longer than a cat nap. There you go. Anyways, how are you? I hope today has been a great day. That's been pretty amazing for me. Actually, you know, this is what I want to talk about today. Our perception of things, our viewpoints, our, if you will, our core value systems. It's so interesting how we each look at the world differently. You know, Wayne Dyer talks about how when you change the way you look at something, the way you see it changes. And I've been saying for years that what you think you see is so much more than what you see. And it almost sounds like double talk, but it's not. If, for instance, you look at a table, you could say, well, that's my table where I eat from. But if you stand upon it, all of a sudden it's a step stool. And I've given that example for years and years and years. The idea being that it's not as concrete as we think it is. And the same thing is true with everything. I'm going to give you an example. If, let's say, you're married to somebody who comes from great wealth and they grew up in privilege so that they never had to really work. They worked if they wanted to, or if they worked, it was more a matter of their parents perhaps wanted them to learn responsibility. But it wasn't really a necessity. They weren't really starving. They weren't really concerned about paying bills. And then let's say the other person in the relationship came from, we'll say, I don't know, average to middle income, middle upper income, you know, nothing where there is a dire concern. They had their needs met, all was well, but it wasn't as much of a luxuriant lifestyle. And let's say you blend those two together in a relationship, whether it's a boyfriend-girlfriend, whether it's a marriage. How you look at your world really is dependent on how you've been looking at your world. Now, you can change it, of course, but you have to be aware of those core beliefs. Now, for me, it's very interesting because when it comes to relationships, whether it is personal, whether it's familial, whether it's business, there are two key components that are very important to me. One is kindness, and the other is respect. Now, what goes along with respect, though, is a little bit complicated. There's a caveat there, and that is, if you give me your word on something, then there's an expectation that you're going to follow through on your word. Other people, let's say their core beliefs might be love and validation. So everywhere they go, they try to exhibit those, if you will, traits as well as receive them. But what's really fascinating is if you look too hard sometimes, you get just the opposite of what you want. And I'll give you an example. There's a program that I attended recently. I'm constantly attending different programs, conferences, what have you, because and I've said this before as well, very curious about many things. And one of the things they were talking about are through business, how you excel. And a lot of folks have the idea or the belief that the only way to succeed in business is to talk to as many people as possible, put as much advertising out there as possible, marketing in every way, shape, and form. Other people believe it's about relationships. You make a relationship with somebody, they in turn share that information with somebody else who they have a relationship, and they in turn share it with someone else. So it's that idea of exponential growth through relationships. And then you have people that believe it's hard work and only hard work that gets you to where you need to be. Now, if you think back to the 50s, the 60s, even early 70s, so many people believed that you go to school, you get an education. After the education, you get your dream job because, after all, you went to school, so you deserve that. And then you work for a period of time and you retire. And when you retire, that means everything's taken care of. You don't have to worry about bills. You don't have to be concerned about really anything because you put that hard work and energy, that belief of, I'm going to put in my hours and in return I'm taken care of. That's what was in place. And today there are still many people that believe that way, but there are many people that do not. And you'll find that in, we'll say, the late 1990s, 2000, coming up to 2015 where we are, we probably have more millionaires that are in their 20s and 30s than ever before. They have a different belief system. Their core belief is completely different than perhaps ours and the way we were brought up. So the reason that I bring all this up is, again, what's your belief? What's your core essence? If you don't know what that is, life becomes very difficult because you find that you're not getting your needs met. There's somebody I know who I spoke with the other day who is a lovely person, and this individual really would give you the shirt off their back. And yet, they always say, why me? They always say, how come that other person over there is doing great? Or they'll tell you that they're very positive, and yet when they look at something, they'll find something negative about it. So I'll give an example. Let's say I have a fork that I'm using, and let's say that part of the style of the fork is a deep curve. So as I pick up the fork, this person says, oh my gosh, how long have you had that? You really destroyed it. Look at that. Look at the shape of that. What did you do to it? Now, meanwhile, the fork itself and all of the flatware has the same shape. But this individual is not seeing that. This individual is looking for something other than what's there so that it works for what they believe. So all of this said, what's the point? The point is, if you want better, then you have to see better. It's not just reaching better. It's not just having aspirations. It's not just having goals. All of those things play into it, and of course are very important. By the same token, if your mindset is failure, if your mindset is negativity, if your mindset is, it would be nice, but it's unlikely, if your mindset is, I can't because my parents didn't, or because of the way I was raised, or, the myriad of excuses that any of us can come up with, then you're probably not going to get what you want. Now, we can look at the connection here with karma and soul journey, because it is all interrelated, but perhaps maybe not in the way that you think. We all come to this earth with the potential of doing what we chose before we came here. I know that's kind of an abstract idea to consider and contemplate, but it simply means that there was, we'll say, a map that we had prior to coming to the earth. And on that map is the direction that we believed we wanted to go, again, prior to coming here. And to help us achieve getting from point A to point B on that map, we came into this world with certain traits, certain beliefs, certain families, certain friends, to help us go from point A to point B. The interesting thing is, we may believe that going from point A to point B means getting something or gaining something or accomplishing, when in fact, our map may have simply been for us to touch enough people in this world to make a difference, simply by our presence. Our map may have been to see many different places. Our map may have been to bring a child into the world or help an animal. It may have nothing to do with us whatsoever. And yet, we may have that belief that, well, my life is miserable because, and I have to get to where I'm going because, and it's the right thing. Simply put, if you're unaware of your life's purpose, that map of the reason that you came into this world, don't worry about it. Take a moment and decide for yourself, what is it that you truly want? What is that core essence? What is it that makes you happy? If you have someone in your life who is always loving and supporting you, and yet you're always feeling as if the other foot is going to, shoe is going to drop. Hopefully some of you laughed at that. Then you're never going to have happiness. You can't have happiness unless you're happy within yourself. You can't have love unless you have it within yourself. You know, that old saying about you have to love you before you love anyone else. And everybody's like, oh, that's phooey. You know, I don't like myself, or, you know, I can't do that. Sure you can. Because the more that you do it, the more that you're in touch with yourself and understand who you are, what your belief system is, what your core essence is, the more you can connect with it, and the more that you have the potential to create the best life possible. If you wake up every morning and go, oh, I hate my life, I don't want to go to work, oh, look, it's rainy today, oh, it's sunny today, it's whatever, then you've already set a stage. And I've shared this before, but I genuinely wake up in the morning and I'm in a good mood. There is no reason for me not to be in a good mood. I like my surroundings. I'm content where I'm at. Do I always want to do everything I need to do? No, of course not. I'm human. There are times that, you know, I really don't want to clean the oven, or I don't want to take out the garbage, or, you know, bigger things, obviously. But am I going to allow it to control me? That's the question. No. I had a neighbor, because I moved recently, as I think I mentioned before, say to me the other day, oh, there she comes. There's that girl that's always smiling. And I kind of chuckled to myself, because maybe I am smiling, but I don't realize it. It's just something I do. And does that mean that everything's always peachy keen and perfect? No, of course not. But why would I be unfriendly or unkind or unpleasant intentionally to somebody else unnecessary? Doesn't serve them, doesn't serve me. So if nothing else from today, think in terms of what's your core essence. You know, what is it that genuinely inspires you? And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the quality that is a part of you. What is it that brings your value system to light? You know, you can ask someone to do something and think that you're asking them to do it in the nicest way, and they in turn come back with a retort of, you know, you're picking on me, or you're never happy with anything I do, or why do I even try? It's not worth it. And you're thinking to yourself, whoa, wait a minute, where'd that come from? I simply asked them to do A, B, and C. You know, what's the issue? But that's not what they heard, because they're not in your head, because they're not working from your value system. They're working from theirs. So even when you're having a conversation with someone, if you're unable to communicate with them how you're feeling, it most probably isn't because it's above their head. It's most probably because it doesn't make sense based on their value system. I'm going to give a very succinct and very explicit analogy here. If you're Jewish and someone else is, let's say, Catholic specifically, and let's say one person was raised in a very we'll say both of them were raised in orthodox environments. One being very Hasidic, and you know, the men are not supposed to touch women, and there are certain behaviors. And then the Catholic gentleman raised, you know, perhaps in not only a Catholic home, but maybe the father is a priest. There's certain behaviors there. And you go and you casually are at a party and you share your point of view about you just love your animals and something about their soul per se. And the other person is just incredulous. How could you possibly say something about an animal with a soul? And so they admonish you and they say, you know, you're wrong, and I don't know where you get your information from, and it's not right. And you may be sitting there going, well, you know, we have a difference of opinion, and okay, this is the way I was raised, this is what I believe. It means nothing. I'm sorry, but it means nothing unless the person that you're talking with is able to separate themselves, look at who they are in their world and their proximity to where you're at. It makes no sense. Though if you were to say to the other person, perhaps I'm not familiar with what your belief is. Share that with me. They might approach it differently, and you may not be comfortable with the idea that they believe something different, but you might understand it better. And if you understood it better, then you could communicate better. So again, it comes down to, what is it that we're seeing? How is it that we're seeing it? If you're finding that any area of your world right now is stressed, or that you're not getting your way, you might want to take a look at it and ask why. I had a thing happen recently, and I was sharing it with somebody because I just thought it was so interesting. I'm in a contract with somebody over something, and there was an agreement, and based on the contract, things were supposed to be done a certain way, and it has to do with some repairs, and they got some of it done. They didn't get all of it done, they got some of it done. And the person doing the repairs came in with the attitude of, it'll get there when it gets there. Well, that's not working for me. That doesn't go in alignment with my belief system. So, you bring up the issue of the contract and say, okay, look, here's the contract. It's a legally binding document. This should be abided by. And their response is, I'll get to it. What happens in that space is either you can get angry, or you can give a response that makes them think in hopes that they're going to cooperate. So in this particular scenario, I have this gentleman who's supposed to do the repairs. His girlfriend happens to be standing there, and I bring up the fact that, there's a legally binding document, and she goes off the wall. I can't believe we've been so generous to you. Wow, that's interesting. Generous. I'm making a payment for something. We have a contract. Doesn't it make sense that you abide by the contract? Contract says things are supposed to be done in January. Here it is May. You get the point. But I didn't get angry. I didn't scream. I didn't carry on. I laughed, which actually made this gal more angry for obvious reasons. Because in her mind, the way she saw it was, they're taking time to do what needs to be done, and whoever it is, whether it's me or somebody else, they should just be appreciative. They're getting the job done. Doesn't matter what time frame, they're getting the job done. But the way that I look at it is, there is a set time frame, and if you're already paid for the job, then it should be complete. Now, again, everybody has a different viewpoint here. Long story short, the job is being finished this week, which is a good thing, because it gets to the point where you say, okay, how else do I resolve this? And you'll find that I'm very much so a peaceable person, but there's a point. My daughter will share, if mom gets really quiet, you want to run out of the room, because when I'm at that point, I'm contemplating my next move, which is probably not keeping the peace. It's just getting it done, whatever it is, in whatever way. And, some people automatically go to that place. For me, I don't condone physical violence. I don't condone screaming and yelling. I don't feel that it accomplishes anything. So there you go, folks. This evening's show was about listening to your core beliefs and knowing what's going on there. Make things happy for yourself. Know yourself first, and you can know everyone else. Thanks for listening in and watching this evening. Good night.
Be enchanted and delighted. Connect each week here on WNN for the Halley Elise Show. Also on Facebook and at HalleyElise.com. Thanks for tuning in.